Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Now, first of all, I wanted to mention that I have been working with Kam for months to bring you all this Massacre interview, and we wanted to answer all your questions with the utmost honesty and what's been going on with the band over the past few years. All the good, the bad, and the ugly, to lay all the rumors to rest with facts so the band can go on. Right? So sounds pretty easy, right? Wrong! As is with much of what is going on in the world today, freedom of speech is now a fine line to walk. Now, as a journalist, freedom of speech is the holy grail, but to what cost? Because nobody wants to deal with legal repercussions from any sides that have already been indirectly threatened, we reformatted this interview to focus on Massacre now, along with the most talented musical lineup the band has ever had. Okay, welcome back to the show, Kam.
Yeah, thank you, Jet, for having me back. Yeah, it's crazy that we had to redo this interview because we had to make sure that we were doing things legally the right way without anybody getting sued, basically, for defamation or being held liable for saying the wrong thing. I guess it's slander, I guess. And nothing that I would do to go out of my way to actually slander anybody because, that's not the point here. But, we have to tell it with restraints. We have to be able to tell the truth, but actually with a leash on. We can only go so far and say only certain things. So I'll do my best to be legitimately honest and answer the best way that I can.
Okay, so Massacre disbanded in 2014, and then Rick Ross approached you in 2017 to reform the band, which was a huge surprise to me, as Rick never made it a secret about his disdain for you, but now all of a sudden, here he was, approaching you. What was his plan when he approached you, and why did you rejoin?
Yeah, isn't that ironic how that works? I heard for years that he was basically shitting on me every time he possibly could live. I mean, he was encouraging people to chant "fuck Kam" and stuff like that on live shows. I mean, this is stuff that fans have told me that he did, and he was going around bad mouthing me whenever possible. But he has a way of doing it where he can't get held liable for slander. I wonder how that is even possible. Wow. Anyways, yeah, so actually it wasn't him that reached out and got in touch with me. As a matter of fact, it was Michael Grimm. Michael Grimm was the bass player and vocalist in their band after the Massacre thing fell apart, whatever it did, or disbanded or whatever. I'm sorry, well, I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say that the version of Massacre that was Rick Ross, Mike Mazzanetto, Terry Butler, and Ed Webb split up for whatever reasons. I'm sure fans can go out there and research it themselves, go on to Blabbermouth or any website and that likes to bring that back up and read for yourself. You can Google it. Why did Massacre break up for the umpteenth time? Anyways, they had a band that they put together called The End, and Michael Grimm was the vocalist and bass player in that band, and he reached out to me. He was the one that got in touch with me on Facebook, and he said, hey, I'm in this band with Rick, and, we're doing some Massacre songs live at the show. We'd like to know if you'd come up and play them, let bygones be bygones, basically speaking for Rick, telling me that Rick, was going to put stuff behind him and do this. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd do it. And I said, but the first things first, I got to meet Rick. And we met, at a, I don't know if it was Applebee's or something like that. I don't even remember, in town, and we met for lunch, and basically I felt it out, and he was all, oh, I'm sorry, I forgive, forgive you. That's how funny it was. He comes up with me, he comes to approach me, he says, I forgive you. That's the first thing. I forgive you. Not, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said what I said, but, oh, I forgive you for saying shit. That's how he approached it. But anyways, that's how it got about. Michael Grimm reached out. I went to meet Rick and try to feel it out. And I said, okay, yeah, this feels good. Went to a couple of the rehearsals to work out the songs prior to going and actually performing the songs. I think I maybe did 2 rehearsals altogether with them, and it was basically 4 of the Massacre tunes. It was Dawn of Eternity, Cryptic Realms, Biohazard, and I believe Chamber of Ages. It could have been Succubus, but I can't even recall right now. Anyways, that's basically how it started. That got a really good reception. When I went up on stage with The End and did that. And then after that, things seemed to go pretty well. I mean, they were going, congenial. Everything was congenial. And they asked me would I like to come back and maybe do it again. And I said, sure. So I hung out at another rehearsal with them all. And automatically at that rehearsal, they began talking about reforming Massacre. Let's put Massacre together, blah, 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 and all this. And all the typical, stuff that goes on with, hey, let's put, bury the hatchet, get it behind us and do that. So that's what that was. That's how I came about to basically, I guess, rejoin that version of Massacre. And that was in 2017. That was in November and December of 2017.
So, Cam, what was the new lineup?
Well, that lineup was The End. It was the members of The End, which was Rick Ross, Mike Mezzanetto, and Michael Grimm. And then it was me on vocals. So that was basically The End lineup with me coming back and then becoming a version of Massacre. But ironically, I'm still friends with Michael Grimm to this day. And, he left the band, I'm sure we'll get to that. But, yeah, I'm still friends with Michael Grimm to this day. We still talk. We still converse with each other on Facebook and on the phone and stuff like that. And, he supports my bands. I support his band, which his band is Embodiment. So Michael Grimm is in the new band Embodiment, which is one of his older bands. And, yes, that's a plug, Michael. I am plugging your band, Embodiment. I'll say it one more time. The band's name is Embodiment. So, yeah, I do that. And I do the best that I can to support him, and he supports my stuff. He's been a fan of my artwork, and as like I said, my other bands as well. And we're still friends to this day. But he was under the influence of someone's lies about me. So prior to him meeting me, he may have said some things that were wrong because he's under the influence of someone else's bullshit. As a matter of fact, I mean, even you were under the influence of this kind of stuff from before. You've admitted to me that you thought I was a different type of person, and that's the whole thing. There's a lot of lies out there about me, and people are first they kind of believe that. They kind of fall into that category of believing the lies, rather than meeting me in person and actually finding out for themselves. And a lot of people are surprisingly, when they finally do meet me and they finally do really speak to me, they learn for themselves, as you did and as Michael Grimm did and others. So that's it. That's me.
So yet again, you had another different lineup replacing your bass player, right?
Well, what had happened was, it's kind of hard not to tell you without going into some details. So I'll quickly run through some details. That version of Massacre got together in 2017, and then we were halted because of a trademark dispute between Terry Butler and Bill Andrews had claimed that they owned the trademark of the band and that we could not go out as Massacre. So there was a shuffle in the what I call the name wars was happening, and this was in December of 2017. And quickly had to kind of go through this like name jump thing, which really wasn't something I was at all supportive of or happy about. I just was like real adamant that, okay, whatever, it's not going to be called Massacre Inc. Regardless, whatever you want to call it, just do not call it that. So it went to, I believe Massacre X was the first idea, and the X being the Roman numeral X to represent, the 10th lineup, because Grimm and I had sat down and kind of figured out that this was the 10th version of Massacre. And then that didn't really fly too well. And then one of the shows that we had in Germany, we were supposed to play a festival. The guy was contacted by a bogus cease and desist letter saying that Massacre could not perform under the name Massacre. So the guy, the promoter over there, he went ahead and switched the logo on the flyer, and I believe he wrote something to the extent of Gods of Death. And then I saw that, and I was like, well, hey, just there you go. Let's just use that. And then we decided for a while there to use the name Gods of Death. I came up with the logo really quick and threw it all together, and we were going by the name Gods of Death. Now, during that lineup, we had together, well, they had some songs that were left over. I don't know if they were left over from Massacre prior, which would have been the 2014 version of Massacre, or was it songs from the end? I wasn't really quite sure, but they had a couple of songs, 2 songs to be exact, where they had material written, and they gave it to me, and I quickly came up with some lyrics for those, and those 2 songs ended up being Dead Man's Scream and Return to the Caves of Abomination. And those 2 songs were songs that we put together real quick, and we were, recorded as Gods of Death or Massacre X or whatever. It was basically a massacre, regardless of the names. Anyways, those 2 songs were recorded, and literally on the day after Grimm recorded his bass tracks, the band seemed to just go on a freeze. And that was pretty much what happened. Rick's modus operandum was basically just to stop things and not tell you what's going on. So the band was in a kind of a freeze moment there where we weren't doing anything. And next thing I know, I was told by Roz and Mezzanetto they were no longer going to work with Grimm. So to my surprise, I was like, okay, that's really weird because he just recorded the bass. And no, wasn't given a real explanation, just that he was out. And I guess I should reiterate, what happened was after he was out, that the band was on a freeze. But also, this was during a time when we were going through the name wars. And see, this I can't really go on without explaining what happened with that. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there in doubt. A lot of people out there who have no idea what the hell they're talking about because they haven't researched it. So here it goes. Let me just clear this up for everybody. Okay. All right. Anybody that has any doubt who owns the Massacre name in Trademark, please go and use your computer or your phone that you're on right now, currently masturbating to Pornhub, and go and Google this. Actually, I'll give you the website. Go to TESS. That is the Trademark Electronic Search System under the United States Patent and Trademark Office. It's the TESS website. Please Google this. Go to that. Go to that website. Scroll down, and you'll see a little TD box. And in that box is a search menu. And in that search menu, you can type in whatever the fuck you want to look up. Please go in there and type in Massacre. I'll spell it for you. Massacre. Now, type that in and press the search button. It's going to bring up Massacre in all sorts of different variations. It's going to bring up Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's going to bring up Beneath the Massacre. It's going to bring up Massacre of Your Mama or whatever. But it is going to have just Massacre, Massacre. Yes, I can spell, and I am a smartass. But anyways, please go ahead and Google that. Go to TESS, put it in the search, and then bring it up. And what will you see? You will see that Massacre is solely owned and trademarked by me. It is under my real name. And then you will see that I also have George Cox as the lawyer who represented me. You will see that it went into effect on February in 2019. I would also like to tell you that it took me almost a year to get that trademark. So let's bring it back earlier to what I was talking about. When Terry Butler and Bill Andrews had claimed that they had the trademark, let's go back to that time frame. In December of 2017, Rick liked to go to Blabbermouth, and he blabbed his mouth on Blabbermouth that we were back together again. That was on December 12th of 2017. Several days later, December 16th, that's when Terry and Bill put in the claim to trademark the name. On December 18th is when they announced we cannot use the name. But here's the thing. Just because they put in a claim does not mean they own the name. It takes 6 months to clear before you can own a name. Now, that's a little bit of fact that I want to put out there for you people to understand. When they claimed they owned the name, they did not own the name. They only had put in to claim the name. It had not gone through. And the simple fact is, I waited a year. I got a lawyer. I had my lawyer look into it. My lawyer looked into it and found out that no, the name did not clear for them. They did not own the name. And as soon as it was cleared and registered, I registered for the name. And I still had to wait 6 months for it to come clear before it was totally my name. So I had registered in 2018, but it did not clear until February of 2019. And as soon as it cleared and we knew we were in the clear, that's when we started to put things together. And this goes back to answering your question. Who was the bass player? Well, after I said we were no longer working with Grimm, the band was on a freeze, and it was good because during this freeze time is when the time I got to go and get the lawyer and look into things. So this is a long one, long question. We got in touch with Michael Borders. Michael Borders is the original bass player from Massacre, not Terry Butler. Michael Borders was the original bass player. When I joined Massacre, he was the bass player. Back in 1985, 1986 when we put out the first demo, 1986 when we put out the second demo, Mike Borders was the bass player. Mike Borders is the bass player that co-wrote all the material on From Beyond, other than Corpse Grinder, which was written by myself, Rick Roz, and Chuck Schuldiner. But actually, Rick wrote all of the riffs in Corpse Grinder. I can attest to that. And again, this isn't me trying to rip on anybody or lie about anything. I will gladly and proudly talk about my past and talk about the pride that I have in the stuff that I've done in my past with Rick Roz, with Chuck Schuldiner, with Bill Andrews, with Terry Butler. I will mention that all the time. There are different versions of Massacre that I want fans to appreciate. There are different versions and different incarnations of Massacre that I want everyone to grasp and enjoy. If you happen to like a version of Massacre that isn't with me, I'm not going to discourage you not to listen to that. Please go and enjoy that. Please listen to it.
Okay, so what happened with this lineup?
Well, this was the lineup that basically we got out there finally to start playing and start performing. This was the lineup that consisted of 3 of the original members, myself, Rick Roz, and Michael Borders. And Mike Mezzanetto was the drummer prior that, came over from the prior lineup, from the 2014 lineup. So this was finally the lineup, that was going out as Massacre, and was clear to go out as Massacre because, like I said, by this time now I had 100% owned the name myself. So, we started going out. Our first show was in May of 2019. We played Orlando, Florida, and it went well. We went to a sold-out show there. And then the second show was in Germany a couple months later. And it was pretty fucking embarrassing. I'm going to do by right, and as you said at the beginning of this, there's certain things that we can't say because of legal repercussions. And, I'll just say this, that it was, that was a pretty embarrassing show. And it's online. I mean, come on, it's just 2020 now. Everybody has a phone with a recorder, and the show is online. I mean, anybody could pull it up on YouTube and see that it's an embarrassing show, man. I mean, certain members struggled trying to play the set. It was a struggle. It was a train wreck. It was an absolute train wreck. And then we came back. We had a couple more shows. We played Texas, which was really well. That show went well. We came back. We played Texas, and then after Texas, we came back, and then a couple more months off. We were basically going and jumping back. We weren't sticking on a complete tour. We were trying to just do his festival tours and go through the summer, and then we got the L.A. California Death Fest, and again, evident. People you can go ahead and check it out. There were some struggling issues on that show. Again, a big embarrassment. Any guitar player is going to go out there and look at that stuff and tell you. I'm sure there's fans out there going to say, hey, man, I thought it was great. It was great. I didn't see a problem. But, I mean, it's evident. If you're not seeing the problem, you're ignoring it. But there's guitar players that tell me all the time that saw these shows are like, dude, what is going on? How did he forget that and stuff like that? Again, not talking bad or shitting on anybody, but these are facts. These are just simple facts that people can look up. Basically, we'd go from a good show, or none of the shows were great. We'd go from a halfway decent show to a train wreck of a show, to another halfway decent show, to a train wreck of a show. It was just constantly and consistently one bad show after the other, and to the point that me and Mike Borders had to say, hey, look, man, we've got to discuss some changes here. And again, sticking to the facts, we brought some things up that were about performance, and there were some other discrepancies happening that were... Now, one thing that people laugh at and people don't understand is this is a business, okay? I don't care what people... You got a high school sort of, attitude about things, and you want to have fun and go out there and be in bands with all your buddies and stuff like that. Yes, that's one aspect of it. But there comes to a point where if you're a professional band, you have to treat it like a business. And as a business, you have to look at it, what is best for the business? What is going to excel the business, what's holding the business back? You have to look at all these aspects. And this is something that myself and Mike Borders had to basically step back and question. Now, prior to all of this going on, there was contractual infringements happening. Contract. Okay, let's talk about the contract. We decided when we got back together that we were going to put together a member contract. And the member contract simply stated some easy things, and I'll just go with the basic things that got infringed. Anything that seemed like any side deals were going on, anything that seemed where someone was attempting to try to make money or raise money under the band name on their own without confronting the band, because we looked at this was a partnership. The contract stipulated that this was a partnership between 4 individuals. Nobody could go behind someone else's back and do something. It all had to be brought up. As soon as people were going behind other people's backs, my back and Mike Borders' back, about certain things, this is what was brought up. And we brought up the contract, and we also brought up the performance or the lack of performance that was happening. And we had to basically look for the best situation and deal with it the best way we could for the entire business, for the band, for the betterment of the band. Nobody ever fired anybody. No one ever said you're out of the band, you're fired. None of that was ever brought up. Everything was to accommodate and to try and fix things for the better of the band. And when this stuff was brought up, rather than attempt to fix things, he just quit. And he took Mazzanetto with him. He spoke for Mazzanetto. He said, myself. He basically wrote, no, I'm out. And Mike Mazzanetto is coming with me. He spoke for Mazzanetto. I'm sorry that Maz got pushed out of the band in that way, but I don't think Maz would have stayed in the band regardless if Rick wasn't in it anyways. So that's literally what happened. They quit on their own. They just quit. They decided to quit. And that's as simple as that. And that's what happened with that lineup.
So as they say, when one door closes, another door opens, and so is the case with Massacre. So tell us a lineup of Massacre now and how you went about choosing these new band members.
Yes, good. Let's close that door. Let's slam that door shut. Let's lock it and then throw away the key. Yes, because let's get the past behind us, because this is not about the past anymore. This is about the future. There's a new lineup. So we had to kind of shuffle really fast because, like I said, a little bit more about the past because I got to build it up to what happened. Like I said, Roz quit, left us in a bind, basically. We still had shows booked. We had shows booked in Texas that we had to cancel, that we had shows booked in South America that we had to cancel and reschedule. And it was just a really hard thing. And a lot of these shows Rick had set up. So a lot of them they didn't get rescheduled because they were done with a buddy system. Rick's buddies hammering on us about replacement. I mean, what could we do? I mean, I could have showed up. Sure, Mike Borders and myself could have just shown up and just stood there on stage and, hey man, play the album. We'll karaoke it. Yeah. Or whatever. I don't know how people expected us to do this, but we had to find replacement members. So we quickly did the shuffle, man. We went through a couple drummers, went through a couple guitar players, trying to find people that knew the material. And the problem was this. It wasn't that the people that we had weren't good. It's just the people that we had weren't familiar at all with the material. They were death metal fans, they were death metal musicians, but they didn't know Massacre material. And it's kind of a struggle when you're sitting there and you're under pressure and you got to put this shit together, where the drummer is basically looking at his phone and listening to the songs on his phone before he actually plays it. So that kind of stuff like that was happening, and we just couldn't really wait another 4 or 5 months for people to learn the material, even though it's been 4 or 5 months since then. But we just needed to find somebody quickly, as quick as possible. And I knew of Jeremy for playing in Venom Inc. I also knew of Taylor. Ironically, Jeremy and Taylor were going to do a band with me a couple years ago, because they work with Roka Johansson, who, if you're a fan of mine, you follow me, I have done bands with Roka Johansson, bands like Bone Gnar and the Grotesquerie and the Skeletal. These are bands that Roka and I do together, but of course these are recording projects. And it got to a point where I was going to work with Jeremy and Taylor through Roga, because Jeremy and Taylor also play with Roga in his band Rib Spreader. So we got kind of all introduced to each other through that means. So it wasn't like I was reaching out to anybody that I didn't know. I was very familiar with who these guys were. I was familiar with their band, Gore Gang, and I really liked that band a lot. So when we were in this shuffle trying to find musicians, it just kind of like a little light bulb went off in my head. Ding! Hey, why don't I just ask Jeremy? Because right at the time we were just looking for a drummer, because we thought we had the guitar player. I contacted Jeremy on Facebook, and I said, hey, man, this is what we're doing. And he just asked, hey, what about the guitar player? I said, well, we don't have anybody set in stone. We got a couple people. And he said, what about Taylor? I said, well, yeah, I've heard what you guys did before. Because believe it or not, Jeremy and Taylor had a whole album of stuff written that they sent me a couple of years ago, I think back in 2016. And I was working on vocals for it. It was really good stuff. It was stuff that they did with Roga. And that just got shelved. And so I said, yeah, this is no problem. I mean, if you want to bring Taylor along, and got to talking to everybody, and it just worked out really well. So that's basically how we ended up with Jeremy Kling and Taylor Nordberg was through my association with Roka Johansson. I wish I could just say it was me and I came up with the great idea to get these guys, but no, it wasn't. It was my idea to get them, but it was literally because of Roka Johansson, who is a god. Roga is a friend of mine who I've never met in person in real life. We have been working together for over a decade now on stuff. Roga is literally a machine. The guy's a god. If you're a Roga Johansson fan, you know how many bands he does. He is the Swedish death metal machine. That's all I'll say. I mean, he's a great guy, and literally it was because of Roga Johansson that I was able to get in contact with Jeremy Kling and Taylor. I mean, this is literally how it all happened. So we got in contact with these guys and just kind of started working from that process on. And I have to say, I'm very, very, very proud to be doing this with these guys. I mean, these guys are professional. I mean, literally, when you talk about professional musicians, that's these guys. That's what they are. Jeremy is professional. He not only is a drummer, but he runs sound, front of house sound for several bands. He's in Venom Inc. Took over the place of Tony. Abaddon took over that position to step in and play in Venom Inc. And he has his own band, The Absence, and with Taylor, as well as Gore Gang. They do that band together, and other projects and stuff he's done, like Rib Spreader, like I said, with Roga Johansson. So they're definitely professional level musicians, and this is the kind of musicians I have been working with in the past decade. Since 2008, everybody I've worked with is professional level musicians. Regardless if we haven't gone out there to tour, but we've been professional level on a recording level of stuff. And and Jet, these guys, everybody that I've worked with, everybody from Jeremy, everybody from Taylor, everybody from Roga Johansson, everybody from Dave Ingram, everybody from all of these connections that we have. Johnny Pedersen, me and Not Robin, we do that band together, but Johnny has so many other bands, God Forbid, and Henry Kane, and so many bands that he does. There's this kind of world connection between all these musicians that record bands together, and kind of like in that little circle there.
So Taylor and Jeremy are phenomenal musicians and very, very professional. Now, what changes have you made as far as management goes and representation of the band?
Yeah, and they are great guys. I mean, phenomenal musicians, very professional, as I was saying before. But as far as management goes, yeah, let's say I wanted Massacre to finally have proper management. I mean, in the times that I was in Massacre, that it never had proper management or representation at all. I mean, as far as I know, 35 years of the band's existence never had proper management. So one of the things that I said after Roz left was, hey, let's get real management. Let's get a real management group, in this. And Jeremy and Taylor were already working with EMG management group out of New York City. And Nick is the manager of their band, as well was The Absence, as well as being manager of bands like Suffocation, and road tour manager for Morbid Angel, and doing merch and stuff for bands like Morbid Angel and stuff like that. So Nick is familiar, and he's a manager for many bands out there. So it just like all fell into place. It was like I wanted proper management. Jeremy and Taylor were working with a proper management group, and it just kind of fell into place where Jeremy got me in contact with EMG, and I got in basically to write Nikki and Joanne of EMG and tell them that Nick was interested in managing us, and it just all really fell into place. And I'm very, very happy that it did, because now we have actual real management representation with a real management company out there that works with death metal bands.
Now, will there be new music from you guys? I mean, I know Taylor and Jeremy are both in other bands, Jeremy in Venom Inc., which has been touring a lot. Have you all been doing any writing for the new Massacre?
Yes, there will be new music. There is new music. As a matter of fact, there's a whole album written already. That's how great Taylor and Jeremy are. Matter of fact, I am very proud and very happy to basically say how amazing Taylor is, and I'm very proud of the guy. The kid is just right on there with doing everything the right way. One thing was quick and evident was how fast they learned all of From Beyond. It didn't take them but several days. That shows you professionalism right there. Not only that, Taylor took it upon himself to really study the sound, the style, and the tuning as well. He took the songs back to the tuning, the proper tune, the standard D tuning. A lot of fans out there were complaining that things were done. Rick changed his style. Rick changed his tuning, and he was down tuning to be like everybody else. And a lot of fans were like, hey, what happened to the D standard tuning? And Taylor took it upon himself to bring it back to that D standard tuning, which is very appreciative. I should say I appreciate that very much, because that's the whole point of this Massacre reformation in the first place. Was we were trying to recapture that retro sound and that retro style and bring back that 1985, 1986, 87, early 90s style of death metal, and that's what we're doing. So Taylor took it upon himself to really go out of the way to get the proper sound, to get the proper equipment, so he could sound like he was coming from that era.
Now, I know it's kind of early to say, but do you plan on working on a full-length album first or an EP?
Well, like I was saying, yes, there is an entire album already written, a full-length album. I think it's best that we probably come out with an album and not an EP, not a soft release. We were thinking maybe we should do like a single, a 7-inch, and stuff like that. But talking to Nick and our management and talking to, the label that we're hopefully going to be working with and all that kind of stuff, and I'll get to that later, but we really, really think that the best way to come out of the gate in 2020 is a fresh start, coming out of the gate straight away with a brand new album. And it's already written. Like I said, there's actually an album and more written. There's enough for an album and an EP. And I really think that an album is how we're gonna approach this. We're gonna come out with a brand new album.
So what kind of sound and music can we expect from this Massacre?
Well, the sound, as I was mentioning before, is we brought it back. Taylor brought it back to that retro 1985, 86, 87 style, and we looked we looked at the demos for inspiration. And, because Mike Borders is also a part of this band now, and he is the demo bassist. We looked at the release like Tyrants of Death, and which is the official release with all the demos, and we looked at that and we listened to that era of stuff. Not only the stuff that Rick was involved in, but we went back to the stuff before Rick, when Alan West was the guitar player, and we listened to the songs that Alan wrote. Aggressive Tyrant, Death in Hell, Mutilated, and we took those songs and looked at the approach of how to write this music. So the music that is Massacre now is a very retro style of music, something that literally sounds like it came out of that time era, but has a modern sound without the modern components, without down tuning to be, without overproduced sound. A very raw sound is what we went for, with a sort of very early death metal, death thrash influence. And I guess you could kind of say that, we forego any of the modern death metal cliches, blast beats and, like I said, down tuning and, gurgled, incoherent vocals, and we stepped away from the grindcore influence that later became prominently embedded into death metal, and we went back to that early pre-grindcore, pre-napalm death sort of death metal, when it was coming out of the thrash era, when it was coming off of bands like Early Death that I was involved in, Mantis, Early Possessed, and taking that bands like Rigor Mortis and that early death thrash stuff that was really great, that was coming out during the time that Massacre was first forming, even some of the D beat stuff like Discharge and stuff like that, and we took that influence. We basically went and said, okay, we're going to look at this 5-year span in between 1985 and 1990 and just listen to the bands in that 5-year circle, because those are the bands that would have been influencing us during that era, and just kind of stick to that style and sound.
So Cam, are you guys going to be touring and stuff?
Well, yes, that's continuing to happen. Basically, that's why we continue to keep going, stepping, and moving forward, because we weren't going to allow someone leaving or quitting, or two people leaving and quitting, going to just end it. So yes, we will continue to tour. Unfortunately, the fans that wanted that that lineup to happen, they're going to miss out, and that's one of the reasons why I put on our Bandcamp site a free download of the first show that we played in Orlando in May, with the prior lineup, was the first time ever that the entire album From Beyond was played and live, and it was the one and only time actually after that show certain songs were dropped, again to accommodate certain people and their lack of performance, but that entire show was recorded, and it was my decision to say, look, fans missed out, and fans are going to be upset, and I know that there's going to be haters out there that no matter what I do to try and make amends, they're just going to stick on that side, because that's they're like dogs with their ass, their nose up someone's ass, like dogs sniffing each other's butts. I mean, that's the kind of, you got those kind of fans, rather than somebody's going to be level-headed and open-minded about it. But I decided, okay, the best I could do for the fans that missed out on this, because somebody decided to quit, is to go ahead and do what I could do to my best ability, is release this show for free. Do not profit from it whatsoever. I wasn't about to profit from it. It was supposed to be a live EP. We were supposed to take several songs off this live show and make it an EP. And even Greg Mandingo, who was he was the sound engineer on that. He was the front of the house sound. He also recorded that and actually went back and mixed it himself. He missed out on it. It was also something where Rick didn't pay him at all, and he did all this work where it was supposed to be where he gets paid, but it never came about to where it was released. So I said, you know what? We have this recording. Let's not deny the fans the chance to actually hear this. I am not out to badmouth or bust anyone's ass or anything like that. I'm trying to do this for the fans. So what was the best way that I could figure out how to do this for the fans was to take that recording and release it for free. And I've released it in 3 segments. There's 9 songs total. I put 3 songs each on each segment. The first segment came out for the holidays, Christmas or Yule or whatever the fuck you want to call it, Krampusnacht, whatever you want to celebrate. I put the first 3 tracks out. Then the next 3 tracks came right after New Year's. And the last 3 tracks will come out a little bit later. All for free. All for free for people to download for free, so they can experience that, because they're denied that now. So that's the last thing I'm going to talk about, the lineup. But yes, we're going to be touring now. We're going to be touring under this new lineup. We're not going to be able to play all of the old stuff, because why? That's what the old lineup wanted and what people wanted. And we have new material. So we're going to go out there. We're going to play the best of the old material. We're going to play some of these new songs and introduce people to new songs. So, yes, we'll be continuing to tour. Hopefully we'll get the new album out, and then we'll tour again for the new album. So, yes, we're going to continue to tour and continue to do shows. And we have shows booked up through all of this year in 2020.
Now, will you also be shopping for some labels, and do you have some in mind already?
Okay, now to get to the label thing. I was going to slip earlier and say something about the label, but I knew that we had to label question later on here. I would love to be able to say 100% right now who we're signed with, but we're negotiating. we're negotiating some deals, and we're negotiating with some of the bigger labels out there, because that's the help of what happens when you get real management, rather than dealing with these small rinky-dink labels. Which, hey, don't take it the wrong way. Some small labels are really great. There's some really great labels out there that have done me right and have done the scene right, but small labels don't always pay. And again, this is a business, and I know there's probably people going, when I say this is a business, they probably get a little ache in their nuts when I say that, because that's not the underground way. You're not supposed to look, hey, I'm 53 years old, man. I've been doing this for 35 fucking years, been doing this longer than mostly anybody out there. And I'm still poor as fuck from it. And yeah, I know death metal doesn't make a lot of money. That's not the reason to do it. That's also another thing I want to bring up. Integrity. I don't think my integrity could ever be questioned. And not to bring this back about by myself, but yes, I've done death metal for 35 years, and all of my bands kind of prove that. I don't just have one band to prove that. I have all the other bands that I had mentioned before: Bonar, The Grotesquerie, The Skeletal, Acatharda, Gravewax, Broken Gravestones. All of these are death metal projects I've done. Even some of my solo stuff has been death metal. So I don't think I've got anything to prove as far as my integrity goes, as far as what I do about death metal. And I also guest appear on a lot of death metal albums. And guess what? I don't fucking charge. Early in the beginning, when I first started doing it, I only charged studio costs because at the time I didn't have a studio to record in. But I've been doing this now for over a decade, and I do not charge. And now some people might say, "Oh, that's fucking stupid. You should at least make some money." No, I try to do this without charging. Some people offer money, and that's great. I like when they offer money, but not. I will never ever say, I'll do it, but you got to pay me. That's fucking dickheads. Now, if somebody offers me money, I'll gladly take your money, because who's not gonna say, "Hey man, I give you $50," and you just say, "Nah, never mind." If somebody's gonna give you $50 for doing something, be grateful that they're giving you money, and be thankful. And I am always grateful and thankful. And like I said, I do a lot of this stuff for free. I don't charge. So, that's basically what I'm trying to basically say is, when it comes down to labels and stuff like that, I know there's smaller labels out there that do their best, but they kind of like pay you sort of like, "Oh, well, I'll release it, but I'll give you like, a little bit of money, and then I'll give you to actually record," because most of that money goes into recording or producing, whoever you get to produce it. And then they kind of give you like, "Oh, well, I'll give you 25% of CDs." And then you basically get, I got a room full of fucking CDs that nobody wants. I got room full of fucking disc that nobody wants, because labels say, "Yeah, we'll give you this shit, but only 5 months after we release it, so we can make all the money." I mean, I know that's kind of bad, and I'm not like telling you what labels do that, but that's kind of like the attitude that you get with smaller labels. "Oh yeah, we'll sign you. We'll put all this money into advertising," which they barely advertise. Like today, there's some good labels that do, but most of them don't. They put it on Facebook. Wow, that's advertisement, and then they expect it to get sales, and they don't get the sales that they get because they didn't really put enough money back into it to back it, and then they make the band suffer for it. That's kind of shitty, but hey, that's the world we live in today. Everybody's a capitalist. Everybody wants to make money. So, but again, I'm not ripping on anybody. That's just how things are done. And from the smaller labels, you get kind of like, "Hey, well, we'll release it. We'll put all this backing into it, and then we'll give you some, percentage of the merchandise." Then you get the merchandise 3 or 4 months after they've released it, and you're sitting on a bunch of merchandise that nobody wants because they've already bought it.
And Kam, if people want to learn more about the band and keep up to date on what the band's been doing, what's the best site for that?
So I think right now all we have is the Facebook page and the Instagram page. Both of those pages I don't run at all. Mike Borders runs those pages. I think I'm an admin on them, and once in a while I'll put a little post or something on it, but I don't sit there all day and look at those pages. I'm really bad at band pages altogether. Even my own bands, I suck at it. It's not that I suck at it. It's just I just don't want to do it. I honestly just I feel it's like, God damn it, man! I don't fucking want to do this. This is taking time out. I already spend way too much time on fucking social media as it is, which is something I've decided in this new year to completely get rid of my personal page and only keep a business page on Facebook. But yeah, I think that's all we got right now. I think, with management, we're going to work on like a big cartel page and getting an actual website going, which I'd like to do to kind of showcase everything. And like I was saying earlier in this interview, never not going to, overlook past members and past incarnations of the band. If there are different versions of the band that people enjoy, regardless if it's the early stages with, the demo stuff, or it's the From Beyond era, or if it's the later era, whatever era of the band you appreciate and you like, I hope to kind of like showcase on the website for fans to take and listen to every incarnation of the band, with the exception of the Promised era, because I fucking hate that album. But that's my personal, But I know there's people that like that album for whatever reason. But hey, if you like it, like I said, I'm not going to rip on any version of the band. I just want to move forwards. This is a new era in the band. It's 35 years. 2020 is 35 years of the band's existence, because the band was formed in 85. I joined at the tail end of 85 and went into 86. And it's now 35 years later. Let's put that stuff in the past. Let's not forget it. Let's respect it and honor it for the retrospective sound and time and era that it was. But let us not dwell in the bad. Let's move forward, and that's what I want to do with this band. As a positive business, as a positive band, to push forward with a brand new lineup and just push forward with new music that's going to capture that retro style and sound. And that's what I would hope fans, open-minded fans, like I said, there's going to be this closed-minded motherfucking dog-sniffing, ass-sniffing fucks, sheeple. People call them sheeple out there. I'll never convince them any otherwise. They got their misconceptions. But then there's fans like you, who, like yourself, Jet, and like Michael Grimm and other people who were under an influence that kind of met me and said, hey, everything I heard about this guy, it's not true. And that's where I want to get out there and meet people on the road and show them the positive things that I could do in the position that I am now in the band, as well as the musicians that we have, the professional top musicians that we have in the band. Everything is going to be pushed forward in a positive light, and that's what 2020 is all about for me. Moving forward in this band in the most positive way it could be done.
And before we go, what are some of the other projects you're working on, Kam?
Well, thanks for asking. I've been so preoccupied with Massacre for the past year and a half now that I've put a lot of things on hiatus. Bonar, I think, is done. I would like to have done one more album with that band, but unfortunately, I just don't see it. I mean, maybe a couple years from now, I'll pull it up out of the sack and decide to do it. I don't know. The Grotesquerie is got one final album. I really wanted to put that to rest after the third album, but then Roga had me write together we wrote a fourth album, and it didn't get the reception I really wanted, and then he decided, maybe we should just do a fifth album and call it quits. So, there is music out there that I've worked on, I've got to work on, and there's my band, Not Robnin, which that is probably the band I do with Johnny Pedersen. Not Robnin came out at the tail end of 2018. That's probably the proudest band I've ever done, even more so than Massacre. It's a recording project. We did the album Cult of the Raven. It was released on Transcending Obscurity Records. with myself, Johnny Pedersen, and Kunal from the record label, we really came up with something I'm very, very proud of. From the artwork on the album cover, the artist did a fantastic job, and I'm sorry I just can't remember his name right now. It's slipped my mind, but the artwork, the presentation of the album, the fact that I got to write a miniature story to evolve the album, and I'm now writing a short novel or a novella, or never know how to pronounce that fucking word. I'm writing that currently now to coincide with the second album and working on the second album. That's my biggest, proudest thing that I have going on this new year, as long as with everything that I've got going on with Massacre. So everything else besides that, and like I said, the Grotesquerie right now is just on hold or on hiatus, including my solo stuff. I thought I was going to be able to get out there and do my solo stuff, but I just don't have the time and energy, because so much of this is taking so much of Massacre, so much of Not Robin, which are things I'm very proud of. It's taking a lot of time and energy away from my other things, and I don't want to stretch myself too thin, because I've got other personal things that I have to deal with that take a lot of time away from everything else. But I am still always going to be doing death metal in some way. Now, the other thing that I've got going on with Under the Massacre flag is this has been something that's been going on for from the time we got back together in 2017. An idea I've been working on is a Massacre comic book, and that's coming along very well. I've got artists from all over the world working on it. I've got artists that have actually finished their submissions faster than I even knew that could be done, possibly. Some great, fantastic looking stuff that's going into the, I've also done a story myself that's going to bookend the story bookend the book, I should say, from the beginning and end. And I've got a lot of artists that are working on it, and that's the biggest thing that I'm very proud of, to put the Massacre label on, because these are songs that are not songs, these are stories, horror anthology stories based on things from Massacre, regardless if it's the songs or the influence of Massacre in some way. That's going into the comic book, and I'm hoping that it's not going to be just a one-time thing. Maybe it's something that could carry on in the future as well.
Well, there you go. Massacre is back, and this time with Jeremy and Taylor in the band. You could keep up with what is going on with them at their websites. And Cam, thank you for coming on the show to update us on the band, and all the best to y'all.
Okay, well, thank you again for having me. This is probably going to be the last time I do an interview about past members or anything that's happened in the past. I really don't want to dwell on that any stuff anymore. Like I said, this is a brand new era, and I want to move forwards with the positive stuff that's going to be happening. So if you've tuned in, if fans tune in to listen to your show, and try to get the story, and they wanted some dirt, unfortunately I didn't do that. I didn't want to do that. That's not something I wanted to do anyways, and like you said at the beginning of the show, you can't say things because of legal repercussions that could happen, the whole slander thing. So it wasn't out there to slander anybody, out there to tell the truth. And if you tuned in to listen to the show, hopefully you got the answers that you wanted.